Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode on the channel. Joining us as always, the host of Kessel Run Transmissions, Corey. How's it going, buddy?
Dude, I just found out that I'm the only one who's able to record this, so I'm doing okay. It's great.
Yeah, definitely some high stakes. It's all riding on you, buddy. But so then we also got Eric Patrick Cameron. He's with us from ericcameronfilm.com. What's up, Eric?
I'm doing great, guys. I'm really happy to be here and talk to Kevin Kiner, Sean Kiner, and Dean Kiner. Really excited.
Sir.
What a segue, Eric.
He just went right into it. Yeah, but we are also very excited to have the composers of the final season of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, Mr. Kevin, Sean, and Dean Kiner. How's everybody doing?
Great. How are you guys?
Doing all right. A few things have changed since we last
Just a
did
couple.
this.
A little bit.
Just a few things. We might be still working from home, but it's been quite a time for the Clone Wars to come back and have its final season. But you guys did an amazing job with all the new soundtracks. So I think we're doing all right, thankfully.
Good. Yeah, it's being really well received. I think, I don't know if I said to you, I probably did. I felt like season 7 was kind of what everybody had hoped that Clone Wars would be like when we started 12 or 13 years ago, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like the audience is feeling that way too.
Yeah. I mean, the episode, the new season, of course, came back with the Bad Batch. And that was a really wild experience, I think, for everybody. I mean, because you're suddenly watching the Clone Wars again as if nothing has changed, as if no time has passed, and it was just back again. And it was fantastic. The animation being totally refined and having all of these new tracks from you guys. I mean, there were some great ones in there, like the Bad Batch theme, for example, when they come crashing out. I mean, it was great. It was really cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
You know, the funny thing about the Bad Batch theme, because we only get one episode at a time, so we had no idea, like, how many episodes, if these guys were just going to be like a one-off or what, right? But we liked them so much, we were like, we got to do something really cool for them, right?
Yeah.
And so we ended up making a whole theme for them.
Absolutely. Yeah,
That's
I mean,
amazing.
it's such a man. It's tough to describe the theme, but it's just it introduces them so well, and you somehow manage to really capture just kind of the I guess kind of the strength of those characters together, coming off that shuttle, and it was just really cool.
Yeah.
And Corey, I know you have some really great tracks that you want to bring up.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, it's crazy enough the Clone Wars even came back. You know, we've said this before on the show, but Clone Wars is really what got us into Star Wars. And so obviously when the show was announced to come back, it was like the most exciting thing ever, right? And, you know, this is fresh off Rebels ending and then Clone Wars is announced. And so the minute they announced the Bad Batch at Celebration last year, I'm like, wow, that's cool that they're actually going to bring this arc to life. And so naturally I'm thinking, wow, what's the theme for them going to be like, and the new music. But I have to say, there is a couple right off the bat that really caught my attention, and it's the track Misplaced Hope, where Rex is looking at the picture of Fives and Echo, and you just hear the clone theme echoing throughout it, and this almost sense of like sadness and dread over the fact that the war is coming to a close, and Rex is starting to really question everything. And of course, you guys also had, you know, themes like the Poltex, where we got sort of some foreign music going on. So what was like the approach to the Bad Batch in terms of Rex's, you know, frame of mind and sort of trying to, it sounded like you guys are trying to make it all like, you know, very, very, I don't want to say depressing, but, you know, like, but that's how it should be, right? It should be that way. Like, it should be very sad.
Yeah, I mean, that's the end of his like life goal, you know. It's like this whole war was what he was made to be, you know.
I think I told
Yeah.
you guys that I had to go back after having done Rebels and relearn some of the themes I'd written. And, and one of my favorite themes, because in many interviews, people ask me, of course, my favorite theme I've written is Ahsoka's theme. But right up there with a couple of others like Satine's theme is the clone theme. And, I needed to go back and find out what that was because I didn't remember. And then putting it in the context of what was happening now with, you're talking about Rex and all that, it actually naturally fell into that kind of, so it was really cool to be able to use that theme again and to place it kind of organically into a brand new season and brand new situations.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's what makes the Bad Batch so special too, is you guys use so much of the original cues from throughout the series, so it felt like classic fun Clone Wars. Like that's what I love about Bad Batch is you could put it, in any season in like 3 to 6 and just be brought into that world. Because I really think that the music is what drives the series so well, and that's so. Thank you guys for that. Like it is just been such a fun ride with the music.
Before we get away from Bad Batch, because we sort of wanted to talk about, you are pretty much, I think, the first interview the three of us have done together.
Nice.
And so we kind of, we suspect that people want to know what our process is
100%.
and how that's changed from myself being the primary composer and stuff. So the Bad Batch theme is a really great example of that, where I've said that like Sean is one of the stronger melody writers. Probably, I think he's stronger than I am. At least he's more consistent. Every time Sean writes a melody, I think it's really great. And so the Bad Batch was assigned to Sean. We don't work in a bubble, and it's not like, oh, you go do that and then I leave. We all work over here. We have 3 studios here in different buildings at my house, and so we work together and we go in to each other's. Like I'll go to Sean's workstation, I'll listen to what he's doing, or he'll come to my studio here and listen to what I'm doing, and he'll give me comments, some of which I don't listen to.
Like
and I'll give him comments and stuff. But when I heard the melody he came up with for the Bad Batch, I was just like, wow, that's it's just great. And I don't know if Sean, if you want to talk a little more about what you were thinking and stuff.
Well, when working with Dave Filoni, he always gives us like great starting points for different things. So he was talking about like the inspiration for these characters, and so he talked about things like Dirty Dozen or Guns of Navarone, right? So those old like military adventure serials with like a group of misfits, right, was kind of where we wanted to like start with the sound. But then
The Great Escape, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So then we wanted to start in that space, right? But also make sure that it felt very Star Wars,
Yeah.
Right.
So it was just that process of trying to make sure that those two kind of tones meshed well.
I love that. I love thinking about it like the Kiner campus. You guys just have like 3 things, just with 3 setups to make some of the best music that Star Wars has ever had. That's really cool. That just sounds like such a great working thing you guys got going on there.
It is, and it's highly unusual. Very few other composers. Joel Goldsmith was one of my best friends. He was Jerry's son, Jerry Goldsmith's son. Both Jerry and Joel have passed away, but there aren't a lot of Peter Bernstein, Elmer's son, is a friend of mine. In fact, I just talking to him on Tuesday. He's conducting a lot of his dad's pieces in concert for the picture, but they're just, that's about it. I mean, they're just not many people who are working. And I've always said I always wondered. I didn't ever really tell them to go into music. I made sure they had music lessons and they were really musical and exposed and practiced hard and all that kind of thing. And Dean went to the Berklee College of Music in Boston. And, Sean was like a piano prodigy when he was really young. But I never encouraged them at all or discouraged them from going into music. But the fact that they have, and that now, they're woven into kind of my sound, and also that my sound, I think, is hipper and fresher, and I haven't burned out after 35 years of doing this. It's amazingly cool. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I think, the collaboration that you guys are doing must be just like the most exciting thing ever, to be working as a family and then to be able to, obviously, Kevin, we've talked about this before, but for Sean and Dean, what was it like to just get into the world of Star Wars and meet Dave Filoni and just start working with Dave all of a sudden and start working with this cast and crew? Like, that must have been mind-blowing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was very nerve-wracking at first, but it was incredibly exciting. I mean, growing up with it, I was very young when my dad started working on Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Oh man, what was I, 13 or 14 years old?
Probably, yeah.
So I just grew up with the show. I grew up with the Star Wars, or the movies when I was so young.
Yeah, here, I'm gonna get the picture of the premiere of the movie.
Oh yeah.
Man.
So yeah, it was just this was, and I'm a huge nerd because I grew up with Star Wars.
Right.
Us nerds tend to be pretty excitable and get pretty nervous, but yeah, it's interesting because doing or actually starting the work actually felt really natural to do though. So meeting everyone and seeing all the cast and crew and everything was really cool, and that was really nervous, but actually getting into the writing, it felt really comfortable and easy to do because it felt kind of inherent.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
What
a
about you,
good
Sean?
point. It's in between the episodes, you have this weird mix of excitement and responsibility.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I cannot screw up Star Wars.
Yeah.
But then when you actually sit down in front of a scene, then you're just okay, you're pulling on your knowledge of the lore, and you're pulling on musical knowledge, and then you can lose yourself in weeds and not get too into your head about it.
Yeah.
Right. Breaking it down. I mean, that was one thing that I noticed all throughout with this final season, is just how well placed everything was in terms of the lore that you guys pulled from. I mean, whenever the main Star Wars theme or the Force theme came in, or even Anakin's dark deeds later on, the spin that you guys had on that. I mean, it was just always perfectly timed, never too much. Really, really well put together overall. And
Got to give a lot of credit to Dave Filoni for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we wind up executing that and making it elegant and stuff like that, but he definitely gives us those spots. And we talk about those extensively, when we're looking at the show for the first time with him. It's hey, is the Force theme happening here? Is Anakin's dark deeds? Are we going to do that? How much, how long should it go? How heavy should it be? Should it be more of an allusion to it, or should it be the real thing, or whatever, So Dave's really very, very astute when it comes to that.
Because I think there was even an allusion to Duel of the Fates very briefly when Maul has Ahsoka cornered down in the tunnels on the planet Mandalore there.
Good catch.
Second season. Yeah. in the Phantom Apprentice, and you hear it just briefly, I believe,
Mhm.
like flash sabers, and I was like, oh, there it is.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And that's the cool thing is with things that are that recognizable. I mean, you just need to, it's like a spice that you just need to just barely go, but whatever, and you're done. You don't need to do any more, really.
Right.
That's what I've always loved about the show. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
Oh, sorry about
No.
Ross just mentioned how you're pulling from different parts of Star Wars lore, and you guys mentioned a little bit earlier how you also pulled inspiration from The Dirty Dozen and The Great Escape, and a lot of people pointing out the awesome Blade Runner style in the episode Shattered. Were there any other movies or styles that you decided to pull from to create the season 7 track?
Oh, there were probably quite a few because they're in the temp track sometimes. So, that again comes either from the editors. There's some couple of the editors are big soundtrack fans. One of the guys, Nick Anastasio, just listens to soundtracks all day long, and he's he's the main editor, and so he's always pulling from really interesting stuff. And because what was it? It was one instance. I can't talk about. Never mind.
Don't worry about it.
Okay, yeah, we'll forget it.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
I think what I should really say about it is that it was from a film that really we didn't. I mean, you would never know once we finally wrote the music that the temp track had anything to do with this movie. But there was an idea there, and the kernel of the idea was a bit of whimsy and stuff. And it was like, okay, we'll do that. We won't do it like it was done in that movie, but now we see where you're going with things.
Yeah.
Right.
The approach to temp is maybe more unorthodox with Clone Wars than any other show we've ever worked on, just because we've been working with the team for so long that they go a lot more holistic with it. It's like it's not like this is what this scene should sound like. It's more like this is like maybe take one idea from this, and we like this, maybe this one element or something. It's really interesting.
Well, just kind of going back to what you guys were saying about having Duel of the Fates in there for a second, something I've always appreciated about Clone Wars is how season by season there's always like a little hint of classic music, throughout. It's not like constantly, and that's what I appreciated about it, is Clone Wars has its own unique take on Star Wars, and I think it's just become one of the most iconic bits of music anywhere for Star Wars is Clone Wars. And Oh, absolutely. I mean, seriously, I listen to the Clone Wars music more than I think anything else, because there's something so unique and special about it. And obviously, we all have a personal attachment to the show, and it makes it more enjoyable to listen to. But, even going to the Ahsoka and the Martez sisters arc, you guys just nailed it constantly. And I noticed that you guys kind of sprinkled a little bit of Maul's Rebels theme throughout the two arcs.
Sean, you want to talk about that? Or, I mean, you were smiling.
Definitely. I mean, if there was ever a Phantom Menace lurking in the background, we wanted to make sure to put Maul's sound that we had established in there, just subconsciously.
Yeah, one of the cool things about Maul is that, I mean, for me, was John Williams really didn't write a theme for Maul.
Right.
So, early when Rebels, especially, I got to write a theme for Darth Maul. And, so, I mean, that's part of the canon now. And that's just killer. I mean, just like Ahsoka's theme is part of the canon. I mean, it's amazing to be part of that. It's still, for me, even, it's still even I met George Lucas 13, 14 years ago, whenever it was, and worked with him for a couple of years, every 2 weeks. that's a great, that's a great bit of my life. But it's so amazing that now I have stuff that's historically just, canon, and it's just neat.
Yeah, and it's in front of what many people now are dubbing some of the best Star Wars to ever exist. I mean, I know all three of us certainly are, and it's like, you guys really brought that to life. I mean, every single episode, especially even in, right in the intros when you see the red text or the the simple text of the part 1 through 3 or 4, and then go into the logo, and it was always these new tracks you guys had developed leading into each of the final episodes, and it was just wild all the way through. I mean, I think one of the most exhilarating tracks you guys put together was Race You to the Surface. And they're jumping out of the gunships, going down to Mandalore. And that was so cool because, I mean, you literally cannot even think of it sounding better. It's just like the whole episode is a perfect celebration of like everything that made the Clone Wars great. And you guys didn't miss a beat. I mean,
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that track that you're talking about, Race You to the Surface. So I don't know if you guys have seen this, but a bunch of people on social media have been putting that track together with the battle over Coruscant and syncing Ahsoka jumping on the gunships up, and
cool.
It like lines up perfectly with Anakin and Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith and their starfighters with the the war drums going on. Was that intentional or is that a coincidence?
That's a coincidence.
That's a coincidence.
Really?
Yeah.
That's the answer. There it is.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we had
we're
no
supposed to
idea.
pretend to be geniuses, you guys.
Yeah, we spent like 60 hours just doing each frame for that now.
Right.
No.
Making sure it works in 2 shows.
Yeah.
That
One
is just
which
like,
already existed.
It's crazy how well it lines up. Like, so a lot of people have been putting the opening of Revenge of the Sith and then going into that shot with Ahsoka, and it's literally every note hits that melody perfectly, and it seems like one thing.
I mean, the scene just can transition right into your track, and it's ridiculous how perfect that coincidence is. Like, that is perfect Star Wars magic. It's almost better that it's a coincidence too.
I mean, we were talking about like pulling on musical knowledge and our knowledge of lore, and that we're just gonna have to chalk that up to like a subconscious association, because we knew what was happening, and Dave's like always briefs us about like exactly what's going on and things. So that must have just been a subconscious thing.
Yeah, it's so great though.
I'll have to send you guys that link because it's
Yeah,
really
that'd
cool
be
to
awesome.
see.
Please.
I will. I will.
That. Yeah.
So yeah, Ross was just mentioning the Siege of Mandalore.
Wait, I was trying to find a thing where it had it.
Don't watch YouTube on the stream.
Oh my god.
That's fine. Go right ahead. No worries
It sounds
at
like
all.
some kind of alien being just like came into the Diner studio.
Right.
Oh man.
Oh wow. Yeah, so Siege of Mandalore is like the best Star Wars. I mean, let me just be quite honest with that. It's my favorite bit of Star Wars that has ever come out. And I think, so since Clone Wars was my number one, the Umbara arc was always like my favorite. But this is, it just breaks any storylines that I would have thought could happen, and just it totally exceeded my expectations. But there's something about this arc, and everyone keeps saying it on social media, that the music is at its best here. And what tracks in particular did everybody write? If you can recall, what's your favorite track that you guys worked on for this arc?
First of all, I'm not sure if any of us remember.
Yeah.
And I mean, usually it's not quite that delineated. It's more of a team effort, and in specific things where we're talking about. I mean, we could also talk about the end of episode 12, where Dean and Sean did some really specific synthesizer work and stuff, but yeah, it's hard to, say, oh yeah, that one scene,
Yeah.
was whoever.
Do you guys name the tracks?
Sometime.
Yeah, how do those
Sometimes
names
they change quite a bit, just because like we'll have a major spoiler in half of the names for us, like on our end, and then we're go to like put these soundtracks together, and all of a sudden it's half spoilers, and we know how that went one time.
Right.
In history.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
well, yeah. What was the one time? It was like A New Hope, and it was like what was the cue title on the John?
No, you're talking about like Phantom Menace, where it's like
No.
Qui-Gon's noble death.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think there also was one in New Hope or Jedi or Empire or something like that, but maybe not. Yeah, and so the record company, which is Disney, will sometimes rename the tracks. Other times, I mean, Sean started out as the music editor for me in the early days of Clone Wars, and so he's would always name the tracks after we did the spotting session with Dave Filoni. So he would name them. So I think, Sean, you do a lot of the naming, really.
I do. I do most of the naming. So like I'm also going just by ear, and the Battle of Yavana.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I could have sworn I was like, I swear to God, he's saying Yobama. And so that's what I had it titled for the duration while we were working on
We
it.
didn't know what it was.
And just like every session, we're making jokes like,
Yeah,
why was
like, why would they do
Obama? What were they thinking?
Silly.
That's great. As Corey mentioned, how great the Siege of Mandalore music is, and it's something that I've been saying since the first episode of that, is how you can feel the stakes are just rising on each episode, and the thrill and the horror, and you're just on the edge of your seat the whole time, because you know that what's about to happen in Order 66 and everything of the adventure of Revenge of the Sith. And half of the reason why there's so much tension is because of the music. Do you think you guys would be able to talk a little bit about how you develop that kind of thrilling and on the edge of your seat music specifically for the events of Siege of Mandalore?
I have
Go
ahead. So my favorite thing about Siege of Mandalore is that after they win, right, and Maul is, Silence of the Lambed up, right? It's a victory, right?
Right.
That is not what the music is telling you, right? You just have these like crazy synths just like staying the same the whole time, like there's like a sword just like tied up above you, right? Like you're just waiting. It's like, what's gonna happen? So I think that's a big reason for why there was so much tension, was what we were able to do there, and it was so great because Dave was able to give us so much space, and you almost like never get that in TV, or especially animation TV, right, where you have so much time and so much space for the music to breathe and just create an atmosphere. But he really trusted us with that, and I think it turned out amazing.
Also, Dave was really kind recently. It just sent us a note about he was watching the scene where Ahsoka's taking Maul back to the cruiser, and I think he reaffirmed. It was just in an email. Just he was just watching it again. I mean, Dave's seen that like 100 times. I mean, I can't imagine why he would watch it again. But he said he watched it again just for the music. I mean, this is my boss, our boss, and the guy who created it and wrote it, and agonized over every shot. But I think he was getting that too, because he put a lot of faith in us, because it's just dead air, man. I mean, it's just outer space, and Maul going. I mean, it's a huge dramatic moment, but there's no dialogue, there's no lightsabers, there's no blasting, there's no any sound that's really going to carry. and you know, a lot of the artistry of scoring something well is not saying too much all at once. You know, and if you listen to that cue, it just goes in a comfortable way, and I mean, it's a tense way, but it's not busy and it's not all over the place and saying, oh my god, maybe something might happen, right? And that makes you actually more tense.
Well, I love how Sean described it exactly how I know I felt watching it. I think I literally said so because, I mean, we've been recording ourselves watching these last episodes, and it's crazy because obviously it being intentional, it was just so perfect because that was immediately what I caught onto as well. That it was just not a victory at all. You know, it's the Siege of Mandalore. It's the final battle of the Clone Wars. They just finally stopped all this craziness on that planet where Maul is cutting people's heads off and stabbing people and taking over. And yeah, it's just an eerie, cold ride back onto the Venator, into hyperspace. And it's not even because the ship is dark and hyperspace is blue. It's because those synths just don't let up. You're just they force you onto the edge of your seat, and I think that's it's something I really haven't seen outside of like Blade Runner, or really that's something you only see a handful of times.
So you know, I think Sean has a point he wants to make here. When you say cold, you know, eerie cold.
Yeah.
You know, Sean and Dean developed those sounds. You see, like Sean's actually at his house right now, but. And you see that one synth there, but over here at the other two studios besides mine, like Dean has a bunch of hardware synthesizers, and you know, the electronic element has become, as I told you guys in my interview earlier or whenever that was, a few months ago, you know, electronics are starting to take more of a front, kind of more of the front of the stage now in some of the score, not all of it, but that was a great place for it to go. And Sean, you want to talk about like the coldness, because people talk about Blade Runner, but there's, you know, it's electronics is electronics, and different electronic sounds evoke different feelings, and Sean had a feeling about the sounds they developed.
Yeah. So I mean, specifically for the Maul being transported, we wanted to, I kept thinking of it as like, I'm trying to make a musical sword of Damocles, right? Because it's like your victory, you have the victory, you're like feasting, but you literally do have a sword, or I guess in this case a lightsaber, tied with a thin string over your head, and you don't know if it's going to drop or when it's going to drop, right? And so I think actually the space, the fact that Dave gave us so much space allowed us to build the synths differently. Because if you don't have a lot of time, you can't have a ton of ring out, right? So we were able to, in this case, because we had so much space, we were able to make synths that you just like, you know, you press the button, right? And it has a sound that just opens up, right? And it has so many different layers to it, right? And as the top starts to fade away, you know, you have different sounds as it fades out, and just stuff like that. Being able to have the freedom to do that, I think, really influenced what we were able to do.
Yeah,
and
one
also,
thing.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Just one thing to add about like the way that, or like our approach to making synthesizers and like having the electronic element is, especially for this like last arc, there's like a way to introduce a like instability with a synthesizer that it's hard to get an orchestra to do, and you can have this like weird underlying kind of wobble, if you will, like inside the synthesizer, doing something like it's making like this, like say just like a major basic chord, but then there's something like just kind of pitch bending or twisting inside of it. And
it's something the reason an orchestra wouldn't do this because that'd be bad.
Yeah, because it'd be out of tune.
Yeah, that would be like,
Right.
you know, they work their whole lives not to wobble on their clarinet or whatever it is, you know. But it's electronics can do. It's so cool to be alive right now. I mean, Mozart envies us really because he would just love this stuff.
Yeah,
No, for sure.
Like a counterline playing back in a key that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I think it adds so much now to TV and movies and just music in general. And it really helps establish atmosphere and establish stakes and what's going on. And I think that's why I've always loved to see the evolution of music, and where we're at today is just so cool. And you guys are so inspiring just to see what you guys can do.
Yeah.
But, like, I think that's, like you guys were saying, the greatest thing about Shattered in particular, the third episode of this arc, was that the music carried it throughout and gave you the sense of just, the whole time I'm like, oh, something bad's about to happen. Like, we're getting there. Order 66 is about to happen. But when Order 66 does happen and we're finally there, we've made it. Like, Clone Wars has been building 12 years up to this moment.
Mm-hmm.
We're finally at the end of the series. And then you guys deliver a different rendition of Anakin's Dark Deeds that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Guys.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
That was incredible.
A lot of work is where it came from. That one went through a lot.
Yeah. I mean, you have to give John Williams a lot of credit on that one too, because he kicked ass the first time. And I tell the story over and over, like when George asked me to rearrange the Star Wars theme, I'm like, John did it right the first time, why mess with it? And that was kind of another one of those, but I always say this about if you have really good material, you are a competent composer, you will write much better music. And I like to think of all of us as better than competent composers. And when you have a scene like that, it's almost impossible to do a bad job with it if you're a good composer or a great composer or whatever it is, and especially some of that source material that John Williams. I mean, that's a pretty cool formula right there, and it's great to be part of that.
They still look great.
Yeah.
And that track, like
absolutely.
Anakin's Dark Deeds, and I mean, I think that's something that a lot of us as kids, kind of growing up with the show, as we would kind of anticipate what certain episodes might sound like as we got closer to the end of the series, we're just kind of like, yeah, man, we want to hear, Anakin's Dark Deeds, or like we're picturing, what the end of the series would sound like here. And but that must be so daunting when you're looking at that track and it's like, we could just paste it in. Yeah. Or in this case, because Ahsoka is leaping onto a holotable, and it's a much more fast-paced moment. Out of all the Jedi who die in that whole, in Order 66, not a lot of them are not as drawn out as Ahsoka's experience, and so it becomes like a more action-heavy and tense thing when she's on that table deflecting all the saber bolts. So. I mean, the most noticeable difference that I picked up on at least is that it's just so much more alive, I guess, for lack of a better term. It's kind of like it's
but it's not, funny. You go back and listen to it, because the track itself is not really an action track.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, you listen to it alone and don't, think of what's going on with Ahsoka and stuff. It's hitting the right places. This is where I gotta take the credit. So, but it's doing the right things at the right time, which is why it feels like it's. But that's not an action track.
And you're not wrong that it feels like that. We always score with the effects and dialogue track turned on, right? So we are very aware of how our music is interacting with the sound effects and things. So. I mean, you're not wrong to have ingested it like that.
No, it's just on the screen. That's why it feels that way.
Yeah. I almost want to go back and play it now. It's just with like a black screen, or just minimize the window.
One other thing, this is like an insight into actually like our process. And I mean, I say my process because they get it from me. Well, I mean, they've learned it from me. This is the one of the better schools you could go to right here, I think. And so we do. It's a thing I've always done. Is I write the cue with the dialogue and with the temp sound effects on. So rather than put like drums da 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 da, if there's a space and there's a blast, well, I don't need a drum there. I can put a drum before, I can put a drum after. You can put a trumpet before and after a piece of dialogue, or a grunt, or a clang, whatever it is. So now the dialogue, the sound effects, the spaceships, the lightsabers, whatever it is, are part of your percussion. Right. So that's why I say go listen to that cue with all the percussion, which is lightsabers and stuff like that, because that's really part of our track in a way.
That's so cool. I mean, just kind of like that insight into how you guys kind of are able to build tracks like that and make them do different things that otherwise, I guess, like you can't really pick up on because of how much you're being hit with.
Mm-hmm.
That's really.
And the point I really want to get across is that I pay attention. We pay attention.
Yeah.
Actually, this is thought out.
Yeah.
The process that you described, it's incredibly unique, and obviously it shows. How did you develop that kind of a unique process?
I've just been doing this for so many years. And when I first started, I mean, I was working on tape, and I would have to, you can't watch picture at the same time. So when the technology, I think it was like when I finally got like a Mac Plus, so this is like a late 80s or something like that, early 90s, whatever that was. And it would actually chase, and I could hear the dialogue while I had a click track going on, or while I had some of my cello or whatever it was. That was just like, I think it was just a game changer for me. It was just like, wow, this is a different way of scoring, because before I'd just been writing music, and I sort of, I know at bar 13 the door closes, but that was about all I knew. I knew I'd have to make a tonal change. Now that you can hear everything, I mean, you can get very complex, and I mean, it's nothing I don't remember ever like thinking of it.
Right, it just kind of comes naturally.
Natural process, definitely.
Intuition that just comes to you. I mean, I imagine that's got to be one of the most refined intuitions like that you can have after decades of doing this and evolving your work and your style naturally over all those years with everything that's come next with technology and with the evolutions and what's available. I have to imagine that's been pretty cool for you.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's cool. It's just, I hate to be immodest. Usually I'm fairly modest, but I mean, I've just been watching this Michael Jordan series, which is it's so fantastic. And I mean, he does some insane stuff and he makes it look easy. Right. And it's not easy, and it's not even easy for him. And but he did it so much. He practiced so much. He lived it. He breathed it. Obviously, he had a great talent to begin with, and I think it's similar with us. There's billions of hours of sweat not billions maybe, but whatever that go into this, as well as natural ability.
I think you said last time that you think somewhere in the ballpark of over 10,000 tracks across all those years.
I've done over 10,000 episodes of television.
10,000 episodes of television. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And
wow.
It was a long time ago. I stopped counting that. Yeah. And what was it's over 100 hours of Star Wars music. I was on a panel with Gordy Hobb, and Gordy, I got to tell you, Gordy and I are very good friends, and we meet at different things. And he told me a few years ago at a thing, he goes, people think we're enemies.
Really?
It's like, I'm like, I don't know who those people are. I guess that's why there's an internet, but whatever. But Gordy was, and they asked him, like, how much Star Wars music have you done? And he was like, he was like, well, I think it's like over 30 hours. And he was counting all these things. And he goes, and they were like, wow. And then he just goes, Kevin, because he knew, And I'm like, yeah, it's over 100, Gordy.
Gordy's such a great guy. We had him on the show a while back, and we made like this crazy connection that we grew up in the exact same town, and we had the same band teacher. It was such a weird, like, whoa moment on the podcast, but yeah.
Was he or she a good band director?
I think so. I mean, he got into music, so I mean, something was right.
I'll tell you, one of the first things I did, the very first time I conducted the London Philharmonic, is from London, I phoned my high school band director and told him what I'd just done.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that must have been
it was big. It was a big deal to me, and I learned a tremendous amount from that guy.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, I think it's so important for people to understand that so many of these teachers are like inspirations for our work in the future, and like some people don't have that, which is interesting, but it was really exciting to hear Gordy talking about him and his style, and like my sister was also a part of that class, and so like I remember he came into like Old Republic music for the class to do, and that was like the most exciting thing ever, right? As a Star Wars fan, it's like, okay, let's do it. But yeah, no, so one track that we cannot leave out, which is one of the most important, and guys, it brought me to tears. There is not a lot of things that actually makes me cry on camera, like, because we all on our channel we react to the Clone Wars series, so like you actually can see our reactions to each scene. And when the music hit and you see Ahsoka in the robes looking at the fallen clones, Jesse, R.I.P. Jesse, one of the best clones. We lost it. All of us, all three of us. Like, we all got into a call afterwards just crying over the amazing score for that moment. So how did that come about? Because it was beautiful.
Well, Sean and Dean were heavily involved in that, and you guys want to talk about it?
Please.
Oh. I mean, this touches on a bit of like that instability I was talking about that you could capture with electronics, and because like it's kind of a really lush sound, right? It's like really kind of has like a lot of atmosphere, but like inside of those sounds is like something that's warped and something that's kind of wrong and that doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's still like at the end of it is still enormous and like, lush. And I mean, it was reflecting what we were looking at,
Right.
That was what made doing those so easy, was just like looking at Rex, like look back at her, and just all the shots. I mean, it's easy when you have like such perfect material to like be like crying at, and then you have to do your job. Like,
God, I can't even imagine.
Dean's being a little modest. It's easy for us and Michael Jordan.
Hate that, but it's okay.
No, I mean, yeah. Sean, do you have anything to say about that scene?
There's a synth that I love in there that's like a piano. That's not a piano. That I love how it interacts harmonically with everything. I think that's maybe the emotional core for me of that piece. So
is it the part where Ahsoka kind of opens her hand and then she's holding her lightsaber and about to drop it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was so great.
You mentioned sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I also we have to give Dave Filoni credit because, you know, I mean that's a huge, and in fact, we were just talking yesterday. I mean, we'll just be honest with you guys. We've never done an interview together before, so we were kind of rehearsing a little bit. that nobody would say, "Yeah, Dad sleeps all the time and we do all the work." You know, because they had pictures of me on the couch and they were going to show everybody. But
that's great.
No, but
away.
That's amazing.
So one of the things that Dean brought up yesterday when we were talking about this was it was scary to do that big of a scene that in Star Wars that was heavily electronic.
Yeah, Mandalorian hadn't come out at that point, or when we were scoring, we didn't know what was happening with that production, what it sounded like, who was even doing it. I don't think was like we didn't know who the composer was going to be on that show.
Right.
So like this was really a huge risk. It felt like for us to do.
It really did feel risky, and you know, but Dave was our champion in that, and that's fantastic. It also, I think, Sean, you talked about something about the loneliness of the some of the sounds you guys came up with and the isolation.
The very end of the episode where Vader and all the stormtroopers are looking through the wreckage and everything, the time jump that happens after the burial. There's that like transition to, we were going for kind of like an alienation, you know, like things are bad. This is the end of the Clone Wars. The Clone Wars have ended, and now we're starting the time of the Empire, right? So we wanted something that was going to distance itself from the kind of romantic adventurism of the Clone Wars and the Clone Wars series, right? And so we have these synths that we were going for something that felt very hollow. You know, we're at the precipice of a very dark time for the galaxy, right? A lot of bad things are going to happen to a lot of good people. But we also wanted to make sure to keep an element of the Clone Wars, and so there's you know, you guys mentioned it earlier, I think. So it's actually not a synth that's playing at the very end. There are synths down at the bottom that are couching it, and we chose those. We built those very intentionally in order to make what is actually a trumpet playing sound like a synth. So I mean, we also affected the trumpet, but that synth that's up at the top, you know, and that plays Ahsoka's theme when Vader looks up at the bird. That's actually a trumpet, not a synth, and it's more the context and how it interplays with all the rest of the sounds that makes it feel. And so, you know, it reminds you of the clones, right, in the Clone Wars, and it's playing Ahsoka's theme, right? But it's also feeling really synthetic, you know, and so we put a lot of time and thought into you know, the very end of this series.
Can you guys just score every piece of new Star Wars content?
Please, yes, please.
Yeah.
I'll give you Bob Iger's phone number. You can call him right after.
We will call him right now, and
We will.
yes.
No, he's back. He's
back.
He is back.
He's back for now.
But positive.
Man, Star Wars needs that passion. I mean, that is just
Absolutely.
so important because it just makes everything flow, and that's cool. Man,
Thanks.
because I will admit I have been listening to Burying the Dead pretty regularly since
Same.
Oh, man.
Because I've honestly been using it as like a tool to process my favorite series of all time coming to an end, because you guys just so perfectly nailed exactly what you were going for. I mean, so much so that we would literally, after watching each episode, pretty much divulge to each other exactly what you just described, of whether it's during Siege of Mandalore and the battle ends, just, this is not a victory. We would literally say that to each other. Or getting to the end of the series, I just feel so cold and alone, and not because of the snow, but because of the track. I mean, you just nailed it so perfectly, and as such, we've been using the tracks to just kind of get through it. And it's man, yeah. I don't know where I was going with that, but I had to say it.
Thank you.
You have Burying the Dead set to your wake up alarm.
Now that's morbid.
It might not work. Either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's me.
Well, I mean, yeah, to like, yeah.
So
We're
you're
also
gonna have
saying
sleep paralysis, and if you use
Oh,
that, you wake
God.
up and there's Vader in the room, and it's like, oh no, well, I just woke up into the dark times.
A Vader-shaped shadow. Oh my god. Paralysis is no joke. That shit's terrifying.
Yeah, no, 100%. So, out of all the arcs you guys have worked on, what has been your absolute favorite to write music for?
It's got to be the last four. Last four episodes. I mean, right,
Yeah.
guys?
I mean, if recency bias is allowed to play.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I go back, to Ahsoka Leaves. Is probably, just because of all the things, I did that in Prague. Dave Filoni called me specifically about that scene and wanted a change from what we'd already recorded. Did I tell you guys that story?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Okay, well, so what happened was we were recording in Prague, and when you're like 8 a.m. in Prague, or 10 a.m., it's 1 in the morning or midnight here.
Yeah.
So Dave didn't watch the sessions as they happened, but he watched them the next morning, and we were doing 2 or 3 days of full orchestra. And so Dave heard the cue of Ahsoka's Leaves, and he watched it to picture, and he's like, oh, right here, it needs to be different. And I wasn't really expecting, I mean, Dave doesn't give me a lot of notes, and so I wasn't expecting it. And I'd gone home from the recording studio. I'd gone back to our hotel. Dean was with me actually at that time. And you were still going to Berkeley, weren't you?
Yeah.
Or yeah, so you just took some time off, or it was Christmas break.
Yeah,
I don't even know. But, so anyhow, Dean, thank goodness, was the only one who'd brought any of the scores back or anything, and so he had some score paper, and I think I had to write lines because I didn't. It was the scores already had notes on them, so I had to. But I could see what I'd written from the score that Dean had brought, and then I could see the place where Dave Filoni wanted me to do a change. So I had to like by ear write like about I don't know, about 8 bars or 12 bars of music that fit into a certain section, and so then I took a picture of it with my phone and sent it to the copyist, in the guy at the studio in Prague, and made him get up in the middle of the night and go write new parts for the orchestra, and we had to go re-record it. And at the time, I was like not elated that I had to go through that process. I was ready to have a nice dinner, and stuff. But now that I look back at it, Dave was completely right with the note that he gave me, and the cue is 1 billion times better because of what he told me to do. And so anyhow, that's a special memory of mine.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I have to share a special memory with you, because that track, I used to play it when my buddies and I would leave from the Lego conventions that we would go to, and these are guys that I wouldn't have met without the Clone Wars. And we used to play it as they would like get on the shuttles and go to the airport. I'm not even joking. Like that year in 2013, we were like, I don't know, 13, 14, playing the Ahsoka Leaves track as we would, because we only get to see each other once a year.
Yeah.
And, I didn't tell
you guys are totally normal.
Oh, yeah, we are absolutely normal. I mean, it's wild. I had to tell you though.
That's really cool.
That's
That's
a
an
wonderful
awesome.
story.
That's an awesome thing.
Yeah, it's become iconic though, that track, and it just it was great.
Yeah, I think the Ahsoka arc in particular is another just phenomenally done piece of music throughout the entire arc. And it's just like every single time there's an emotional moment in the show, the music is perfect. It hits you right in the feels every single time. And I think that's kind of rare, to be honest with you, because sometimes you'll watch shows and certain moments that should hit you hard don't. But I feel like Clone Wars and Rebels were always very consistent. Of course, like Kanan's death. So thanks for wrecking us with that, because that definitely killed us.
Yeah.
Or the end of Rebel season 2 with that amazing track as Kanan and Ezra return home. So, yeah, I mean, you guys have literally created perfect Star Wars music, and something that the three of us are very grateful for. And literally, I mean, Clone Wars kind of changed our lives because it got us into the careers we're getting into now, and even the YouTube channel we all run together. It's like none of us would know each other if it wasn't for Clone Wars, and you guys brought that to life for us. So we just want to say thank you so much for doing that. And thank you for giving us a finale that we'll never forget and we'll always remember. And you guys and Dave and cast and crew, we were talking to Ashley the other day and just seeing her get excited about the finale and seeing like you guys literally, God, I mean, it's like, it's history changing for Star Wars.
Yeah. Well, you guys have a fantastic podcast and YouTube presence and everything like that. And we're happy to be part of it. And make sure I'll link you guys this interview on my website as well. And if you can link it to kevinkiner.com.
Absolutely.
We'll do
Absolutely.
that.
Well, is there anything you guys want to plug before we end off today's show? Anything coming up that you guys want to talk about that you can talk about in terms of projects you're working on?
Don't want to get you in trouble.
Don't know.
One thing we're working on right now is the end of season 2 of Doom Patrol.
Oh, nice.
And we're having a great time with that. That's just a really, really fun show.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say that probably, if not for like Titans and Doom Patrol, the season 7 of Clone Wars wouldn't sound the way it does, because a lot of our just skills in electronic music and developing sounds and knowledge of what works in certain areas and stuff like that is from our work in Titans and Doom Patrol.
That's awesome. Yeah, because Doom Patrol is just so wildly different for the majority of the seasons. I mean, it's that episode is a ride. That's got to be insane. I mean,
yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah. You guys
I just really fast want to say that I really appreciate you guys talking about what the series means to you, because we don't really spend a lot of time like on the internet interacting with the fans or anything. A lot of times it feels like we're composing for an audience of each other and Dave and them. And so to hear you guys and what it means, that really I really appreciate that.
Oh no, absolutely.
No, thank you.
Like, yeah, thank you guys. Like there's millions of people who feel the same way we do. And as soon as the series ended, all the different podcasts that we've talked to in the past, or anybody on social media in the Star Wars community, everyone was talking about the three of you, and like in such this endearing way and this exciting way. So you guys have touched so many people's lives with this music alone, and genuinely probably have helped. I mean, Clone Wars has gotten us through a lot of difficult times in our lives. So through your music, you guys have helped people on a personal level too. So it's something that, on behalf of all Star Wars The Clone Wars fans, thank you. Like, we appreciate it, and we do hope that we can get you guys back on whenever, hopefully, you guys work on more Star Wars stuff in the future, because we need you guys on Star Wars for sure.
I bet we'll see you again.
I would think so. But is there anywhere that people can follow you guys on social media? Is there any social media presence? Or
I'm such garbage with social media. I mean, I'm
not.
Maybe
I'm not at
we'll
all.
Just make an account and even though it's yours.
I'm so garbage at this point that I have to log into Twitter to double check my username. Yeah, I'm Sean Stantine on Twitter.
That's awesome.
love it.
That's great.
You know what? If people start following me, I'll post some stuff.
Yeah, we'll tag you in the tweet when we get the episode out. So we need Dean to make a Twitter account and
Well, my Twitter account, I didn't want to say, it's @losertrooper. I don't know where it came from or why that's what it is, but that's what it is.
Fantastic. Kevin, I know earlier you were trying to, I don't know if you found the picture that you wanted to show or not, but
Yeah, where is that? Sean, what happened to that picture where I'm in that striped shirt on the red carpet when the premiere of the Clone Wars feature? I thought it was on your desk in the other room here.
Yeah, it's not. I don't know. Maybe it got moved. I haven't been.
I think it got
the
moved.
quarantine started. Well, actually, since my daughter was born, I've been working at home.
oh, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I've been quarantining before everyone else.
I can imagine.
And sleeping a lot.
Here's Sean in kindergarten.
Oh, great.
Oh,
Oh man, that's great.
Yeah, no, we don't have that. I guess that picture went someplace. Oh, Dean found it. Wait a second.
Oh no.
Here we go.
I don't know. None of us look so great, I think. I don't like how I look.
great.
I know.
No.
Oh no, here a little bit.
Oh, that's
man,
great.
that's amazing.
That's our sister girl, man.
Yeah, Andrea's the middle child, and then
And then my son right below me.
That is an awesome photo.
Wow.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. That
Sure.
means a lot. That's awesome.
While we're sharing, there's me meeting Ashley for the first time in 2011.
Oh wow.
Look at that!
That's so cool.
It's blending in with the green screen, but oh man, just to give you an idea of how much we've changed with the show.
Yeah. I think the first time I met Ashley was in like 2012. Like it's weird because you guys must feel the same way, right? Because you guys grew up with the show, so you're kind of on the same page with us.
Yep.
With
Pretty
that.
much.
But well, I hope to see you guys at a celebration one day as well. I think there should be a panel dedicated to the three of you talking about Star Wars music. Maybe we can make that happen somehow.
That would be great.
That would be awesome.
You should moderate it.
Oh yeah,
dude. I'd be down. We'll help you guys out for sure. We'll spread the word and just let us know.
Right on.
Give Lucasfilm the good word.
There you go. Exactly. Ross, buddy, where can everybody follow you on social media?
You can find me at Michael MGF on YouTube and everywhere else at MGF Customs for custom Lego Star Wars minifigures, namely from the Clone Wars final season, as you might expect.
Awesome. Eric?
You can find me on my website, www.ericcameronfilm.com. My Twitter is the same, Eric Cameron Film, and then Instagram, you add an S at the end for short films and a new podcast coming soon, the Great Movie Podcast.
All right. Very cool.
Yeah.
You can find me at Kessel Run Transmissions at Corey_Wolfpack on Twitter. We have our interview with Ashley Eckstein also out right now, so check that out, guys. We talk about the final season of Clone Wars. We go into mental health, just a lot of great things in that. And then stay tuned for a special message from James Arnold Taylor on the final season of the Clone Wars. And of course, thank you to our guests here. You know, this has been an absolute blast to talk with you guys for this past hour, and talking with you, Kevin, a couple months ago. It means the world to us, so we appreciate it. So as always, guys, thank you for watching, and may the Force be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Alrighty.